Hi friends, I'm Rick, and this is another one of these installments of What the F, right? So when Tesla, I have to ask, was Tesla a Templar pawn? Seriously, was Tesla a Templar pawn? Well, what are pawns? These are people that become tools by other people to achieve goals that they wish to achieve without directly doing it themselves, or putting some distance between themselves and whatever this goal is. And so there's a lot of conundrums and things. There's the story around Tesla is just utterly fascinating. There's a lot of mysterious crap that goes around that story, and especially his later years, right? So one of the things was Tesla is well known or famous for his free energy idea. His idea was that there are certain frequencies and wavelengths in the atmosphere and in the planet itself, all around us, that transmit energy. It's called, current comes in many forms. How we transmit communications is a grand example of that. This is the very stuff he's talking about. Except his idea is that we can send energy, so we can produce energy that can be freely available to anybody and everybody all around the world. And you would have all your wireless devices that we have today. This man here envisioned a lot of the basics that led us to this stuff. He thought of this stuff 100 odd years ago. As a matter of fact, a lot of Edison's work was based on the foundation of the actual inventions that this man himself did and created when he was working for Edison. Although Edison spent the rest of his life fighting that and disagreeing with it. So Tesla goes around and looking for people to fund his projects. And he finally gets J.P. Morgan to fund him. J.P. Morgan, Morgan and Chase, their family's still around, the entity's still around, but J.P. Morgan was the Elon Musk or the Jeff Bezos of Bill Gates of his era. One of the robber barons, one of the most wealthiest individuals in the United States at the time, and in the top percentages of the world at that point too. So J.P. Morgan, through Edison, owned General Electric, I think. He owned a whole lot of energy producing and energy relating industries. And so the idea was that Tesla goes to J.P. Morgan with this idea for wireless transmissions, what we know as radio, right? Marconi is who's attributed to developing and inventing the radio, but he's not the first. Sorry, but he's not. Marconi's the one that got acknowledgement first, but he's not the first the inventor to work in that field and envision the idea. Tesla was one of these people, and Tesla knew that in theory it's a quite feasible thing, and it turned out to be much easier than what people thought it was. And now our society today would be crippled without our ability to communicate across vast distance. The very fact that when I was a kid, we had a phone. We had one landline come in the house, and we had multiple phones. It wasn't until I got to be, in my 20s, and the internet came out. And I was still living at home. I had to pay AT&T to put a second line into the house so I could have my computer and be online, because my dad was not going to let me bogart the phone line all day. We had one phone line. Now, what's your average household? How many phones are you paying for? And they're all wireless. How many wireless devices? My laptop is semi-wireless, being that its power cord is plugged into the wall to get the electricity, and my mic and my camera and stuff is plugged in, and so it's not truly wireless. Although I could get a wireless camera. It's connected to the internet. The Verizon home box is in the living room, but I still got the indication I have internet access in here, so it's connected. And that's all because of people like Tesla and Marconi and others of their era. So Tesla sells J.P. Morgan this I'm going to create radio. And Morgan's all on board with it. But that's not really what Tesla lied. Tesla lied to J.P. Morgan because that's not what he wanted to do with the money. He wanted to come up with a way to produce and broadcast wire energy. So consider that for a moment. Can you imagine if your cell phone, your laptop, your electric car, all of that was not tied down by a cord. If you didn't have to plug that cord into an outlet to charge your device, how better or different would the world be today? You know, when they talk, one of the biggest fears about this stuff is that somehow it's going to cripple the world economy. Our economy is so based on services, money for services rendered. We pay the power company for the electricity coming to power my laptop. And if we were able to get free energy, well, then a whole lot of corporations would now be defunct, out of business, and a lot of people would be out of jobs. That's a real fear and a real, real scenario, real possibility. I mean, I'm just saying, right? So it's just like this. It ties into this here in a minute too. So Edison, and I did some research, and I have no evidence whatsoever. I can find there. You had to be careful about Google and crap, because there's a lot of evidence out there that says both J.P. Morgan and Edison were Templars, part of the Templar order, which is kind of hard to buy because when Edison and Morgan were alive, the Templars didn't exist as an openly known organization. So the Templars ceased to exist hundreds of years before that. Now, there were descendant groups from them. We got the Freemasons, although the Freemasons vehemently deny any connections to the Templars. Right? But the Rosicrucians, they acknowledge that they descended from the Templars, and there's about 5 or 6 other neo-religious organizations around the world. And even the Templars themselves were not completely destroyed. They were rebuilt, I guess. They were entered back into the Catholic Church, but as a different organization, something of the Saint Cross or something like that. I should have wrote it down. So there's a lot of, if you go and you cross over from the Templar story and into the Ark of the Covenant, more importantly, the Ark story itself, as it revolves around wireless energy. There's a whole lot of ideas floating around that the Ark was actually a power source. It was a device that generated power in some way. And the inclinations is that the Great Pyramid, for example, was the generator for the power. And so the sarcophagus in the center of the Great Pyramid is too big or too small to lay a body in, unless it's a kid, but it's the perfect size to put the damn Ark in it, to contain the Ark. And everything around the Ark itself suggests it's a lethal thing. Just being in its presence can kill you. If you accidentally touch it, you're a dead man. The Bible says it. The Ark lore says it. All implications of radiation of some kind. And radiation can come in many forms. It doesn't have to be radiation as in from uranium as in the nuclear bomb radiation. It could be from, I'm going to get sci-fi on you here. It could be anti-gravity, or an anti-gravity radiation. The effects of a plasma radiation, effects of many types. Microwaves will kill you if it's projected at you the wrong way. And how would Tesla's wireless energy be projected? But through the microwave concept. This is how microwaves came about. The microwave oven that you have in your kitchen is a direct descendant of Tesla's work via radar, ironically. It's weird how all this stuff kind of plays out. So there's stories that say the Ark of the Covenant is actually one of 10, that there were at one point 10 arks, and that six still exist. 6 were found and whisked away by a bunch of Templars, along with some other artifacts. That these artifacts, some of the key artifacts in history, including the ones in the Bible, are actually technology from older age. Ideally, the connection goes back to the Templars, but it could go to the Anunnaki too. It could go to aliens, an alien race. It could go to multiple societies. It could go to another intelligent species that lived on Earth millions of years ago. Although my argument would be, my belief it's a human civilization that existed before the Younger Dryas, the major flooding that took place 13,000 years ago. I think that was significant because we know now that Earth goes through stages. Every so many thousands of years, we seem to have some kind of catastrophe that really screws up the planet. And I hate to say this, but we're in the middle of a self-inflicted one right now with this so-called climate change, which is all bunk and what if it's not? What if it's not? We are playing Russian roulette with our future and our children's future, and we're morons. We are utter self-centered, selfish morons, in my personal opinion. But I don't want to get off track on that. So Tesla goes to Morgan and convinces him to fund development of radar instead, radio instead. He uses the money to further his project of producing wireless energy. And he's successful because it's in the stories and the newspaper reports and stuff of the era when he had his big compound, he had the big tower put up. He had put light bulbs in various places around the grounds that were just sitting there. They weren't tied into anything, and they glue and whenever his tower was functioning, they all lit up. So he was producing an energy that was getting into the atmosphere that was powering devices. True scientific fact. True scientific fact. He did that 100 plus years ago, before the radio was a thing, before home lighting was just becoming a thing. And this is when Edison and people like J.P. Morgan were really getting heavily invested in all this stuff. So it was hugely important. So Morgan gets wind of where this money's actually going and shuts him down, cuts him off. Now, there's a fellow who claims to be the head of the Templar Order doing a bunch of videos on YouTube. An older gentleman, quite distinguished looking, and he talks a real good talk. I've watched a number of his videos in recent weeks, and I was surprised to run across it, and B, I still go, is he legit, or he's just, playing a role? We'll never know. I mean, there's so many what ifs in the world. But J.P. Morgan was one hell of a character, right? But I did some research, and I could not find any connection that J.P. Morgan nor Edison were neither Freemasons or in any of the, weren't Rosicrucians, or they weren't openly Templars, because there's no implications that say they were, other than some altered bios for these historical figures who for some kind of game system. So you got to be cautious and read all the print, because we're right off the bat I think, it says right here was related to the Templar. J.P. Morgan was a Templar, and I said, was he? And then I started reading the stuff. Well, it sounds like they're talking about a game, and so I started doing a little more deeper Google searches, and it turns out that repeatedly that no indication he was a member of anything of that nature. But that doesn't mean he wasn't. That's the hard thing about secret societies. Secret societies are secret. Ideally, there a whole lot of stuff goes on inside the Freemasons that the majority of us only think about as mysterious or not at all. Because the higher you go up in the Freemasons, the more information you get to know. The more information they introduce you into their ways. And it's believed that somewhere within the Freemasons is this hidden cabal or group or descendants of the Templars, or the Templars themselves. And like I said, the Freemasons, and I've known a Freemason in my life, and he absolutely finds that retarded. He says that's absolutely retarded. But he acknowledges there's still secrets he doesn't know yet. There's a lot of stuff. He says, and if I did know, I wouldn't tell you, because that's the whole nature of the thing. It's an exclusive group that gets ever exclusiver the longer you're in it, the higher you go up. And it's important to note that there are people who have been in the Freemasons their entire lives and are not that high up. They would not have any access to anything of this nature. They too would think all this is absurd and just stories. It's like the Shriners. We know the Shriners are indirectly linked to the Freemasons and a couple other groups. But that doesn't make the Shriners descendants of Templars, does it? I'm just saying. So, Edison shuts him down, and in part because, Morgan shuts him down in part because Edison goes to Morgan and says, this dude's trying to find a way to provide free power to the world. Well, Morgan's making money off of, selling electrical stuff and power and transporting, everything you need to, just like Edison's inventing and building crap that runs off that power. Edison, J.P. Morgan's, corporations are producing the power that Edison's devices utilize. So neither one of them had any interest whatsoever in free energy of any sort. Now, I find that that's a disingenuous and probably foolish view in the first place. I want to approach this just a hair. Look, I get you that stuff costs money. There's no such thing as a free lunch. The technology alone costs money. The upkeep of that technology costs money. To pay the people to do all those things costs money. So in order to have, quote, free energy, we still have to have energy production. Tesla didn't come up with some way to mystically just tap into the natural energy flow of the earth itself. And I have to question whether that would be a wise thing in the first place. Look how badly we're handling the resource management and the atmosphere. We're destroying our atmosphere and wrecking our world, and it's because we're doing it. And there's no way you can soft code it any way you want. You can dance around any way you want, but at the end of the day, it's our fault, our ancestors' fault, and our current fault, and it'll be our great great grandchildren's fault, assuming they're still around to be blamed. So that's not the problem. This idea of free, that's the problem. There's so many. This just communists and socialists. Look, man. The communist system was not free either. They actually got paid. They actually had a little income. They actually had to spend that income. That's not free. A true communist society, those people the ruble wouldn't have existed at all. What was the point of ruble? Work vouchers, none of that crap would exist. Everybody gets a free share. You get a free place to live. You get a free meal. Here's the food. Here's your free food for the week. But it's free because you worked for it. You have to work. The society has to function, and you have to subscribe to that function willingly or not, right? So even in this so-called socialist, that's a load of shit. So if somebody could come up with a way to produce electricity that was easily accessible without all this extra bullshit, and it cost me a hell of a lot less than what I'm paying for this now, I would still pay for it. I would pay a monthly fee. I would pay a monthly tax for the privilege of having electricity that I wouldn't have to physically send a money check to every month to pay for. That all my devices. How grossly different would the world be? How much different would the world be if that was the fact? If we could have our cell phones never need a battery. All that the biggest part of the problem with batteries today is the toxicity. This is the electric cars run off of massive batteries that take a massive amount of very hard to obtain and expensive mineral resources that go in to make those batteries. And the batteries have a shelf life. That means just like your battery in your flashlight and the battery in your cell phone, eventually they wear out and they stop holding their charges. And that's where the horrible expense comes. If you're wealthy enough or well off enough that you can afford to buy a brand new electric car, that's great. But in 10 years from now, when that electric car market becomes a used electric car market, the batteries cost as much as damn near probably 60% of the cost of your new electric car is the damn batteries. So when it comes down the road and the batteries go south, the person who buys that car used is going to turn around and buy, you buy a $30,000 car, it's going to cost you what, $8,000, $7,000 to put new batteries in it? There becomes an economic problem. But so if we could build an electric vehicle that didn't require a battery because it just runs off the ambient energy that's being produced by our new power grid, but yet that opens up a whole nother basket of worms because all the other fossil fuel industries and stuff and people who make all that crap are suffering because they're not going to get to make it. It's a vicious cycle, and you know what? It's never going to be an easy one to overcome. So this is one of the reasons why it's a mixed bag. I don't think that free is the right term for anything, but at the end of the day, was Tesla a dupe? So if you listen to this fella, this grand whatever the hell he is, that's supposedly the Templar Order, which, like I said, everybody says it's no longer existent, yet this guy says it does. A really super secret organization. Now he's on the YouTube making big fancy videos on. Okay. You know what? truth is weirder than fact is weirder than fiction. And that's true too. So, okay. The idea being is that the Templars acquired a bunch of this technology from the ancient technology that they found that belonged to Atlantis or somebody, some ancient society or aliens or whatever, what the hell else. And they hid them because, in part, the information and stuff that they found. This includes the Emerald Tablet, a whole bunch of actual tablets and I don't know, blueprints or manuals, instruction manuals, whatever. A bunch of stuff that they decided that society would implode. It just simply could not cope with releasing it anytime at the time. But this guy keeps hinting that we're getting closer and closer to when that time is going to come. And there actually been portions of functions, and I have to go back and think. I go back to the 50s, and we see this sudden renaissance, or I don't want renaissance, this sudden uptick in new development and practical invention. Well, a lot of our fiber optics come out of that era. Velcro comes out of that era. Our wireless technology. I mean, the literal cell phone technology and stuff we're using today is the product of that early era's investigations and experimentation. I still believe it's a coincidence that the incident Roswell took place, and then within a decade we see a just sudden leap forward in technology. I just find that interesting because really there's no coincidences. That's actually, it can happen, but it's far for me to believe that most things are contrived, accidentally or intentionally, but they're contrived. So what if he was a dupe? So Morgan and Edison, eager to get wireless communications off the ground, enlist this guy to come up with the idea, but he takes it to the one step too far and starts mucking with basically the wallets for everybody else. But he's not wrong, and he actually stumbles on this. One of the great mysteries about Tesla is it revolves around the hours after his death. And I did a video on this, or somewhere on this channel is a video on it, that a lot of different people come digging through his crap. As soon as people found out he was dead, it's believed the FBI raided his place, or the government did. Agents from the government took a bunch of his stuff. Or agents from Edison's corporation took a bunch of his stuff. And or the Russians, because the Russians supposedly, and we're not talking communist Russian, we're talking Tsarist Russia. The Tsarist Russians, the Tsar had actually funded some of Tesla's work. He got some funding through Russia, and they may have decided they wanted some of that back. They wanted some results for their money. And what if, and what if it was all three these they came in and they just missed each other and somehow got what the others didn't get? But what if if you're sitting on this extremely advanced, world-changing technology, and you need to get it to a practical use stage for your current era. Because if you think of the era that Tesla and Morgan and Edison lived in, was quite, industrially speaking, was the industrial age. It was quite an era for innovation, quite an era, leaps and bounds of technology and advancement. This is what I talk about when I say about the 1950s. They see this sudden burst to the modern technical age. The modern computer age comes out of the 50s. Well, there was a whole long years of stagnation from the industrial at the end of the late 1800s, 1900, the industrial age, to the information age. It took quite a while. But to go from the information age to the computer age was in relation to how long things take, it was like overnight kind of thing. I mean, it took some years, but it was still overnight. So if you're sitting on this technology or this ancient theoretical stuff that you have, you can take to some scientist or inventor in this case and say, look, I want you to try to do this, this, and this. Now, to get to the wireless communications, it might have been your first step. So inventing the ability to send messages through the air back and forth invisibly is the first step to understanding how we're going to put energy into the atmosphere that doesn't kill us and kill everything else on the planet, and we can make use of it. Everything comes in steps. What if, that these people were trying to pursue that bettering humanity's philosophy that this Grand Master guy keeps going on about in his videos. By next time I find one of his videos to think about, I'll put a tag on it on here so y'all can go, if you want, you can go and look it up yourself. But it's some strange stuff to get no getting around it. Some very strange stuff. And I can't. The more and more I think about Tesla, Tesla was an enigma and something else. I mean, this guy was a genius in many ways. Definitely touched in the head in many ways too, like a lot of geniuses tend to be. They tend to be a little bit off kilter somehow, and then that it's the way his life came to an end was terrible and sad, and the fact that it's just no more modern era that he getting any kind of credit really at all for a lot of the stuff. I mean, it's implied that Tesla actually come up and invented the radio first. But he just never pursued it. He didn't pursue it because as soon as he got the funding he wanted, he went after what he wanted to pursue, and that's how. And so Edison and the Morgan pulled the plug on Tesla, and they turned to Marconi. And it's my understanding that Morgan funded Marconi, or part of it, and now history. Marconi's the inventor of the radio, and it's all history. So what if? Just asking, what do you think? What if? The is what it is, the world is what it is. Till next time, my friends.